At my younger sister's pregnancy celebration, my father proudly raised his glass to toast his perfect first grandchild, while I stood just a few steps away, holding my 7-month-old baby girl in my arms, the granddaughter he had never met because my sister had deliberately erased my child's existence from our entire family. My father's glass chimed softly as he lifted it into the air, the sound slicing through the hum of conversation like a cue everyone instinctively obeyed. Sunlight spilled across the manicured lawn, catching the pale pink ribbons tied to chairs and the polished smiles of relatives gathered for what was supposed to be a perfect afternoon. "To family," he said, his voice warm, practiced, "and to the greatest joy of my life. I've waited a long time to become a grandfather, and thanks to Brianna, that moment is finally here. To my first grandchild, perfect in every way." Applause swelled around us. I didn't clap. I stood a few steps back near the edge of the patio, my arms wrapped securely around the soft, familiar weight against my chest. Lily stirred, her tiny fingers curling into my blouse as if anchoring herself to me. She was 7 months old, alert and curious, her dark lashes fluttering as she looked up at the noise with mild interest. She was my father's first grandchild. He just didn't know she existed. "I'm Emily Carter," I reminded myself silently, grounding my feet against the stone beneath me. 31 years old, married, a mother, standing in my younger sister's backyard in Naperville, Illinois, watching my father publicly celebrate a baby who hadn't been born while the one in my arms was being erased without hesitation. Noah stood beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. I felt the tension radiating off him, the familiar mix of anger and restraint. He'd seen the favoritism for years, the way Brianna's needs always seemed louder, more urgent, more worthy of attention. But this wasn't about attention. This was about our daughter. Brianna stood close to my father, one hand resting delicately on her rounded belly, the other wrapped around a flute of sparkling water she'd barely touched. Her maternity dress was flawless, tailored just enough to suggest effort without trying too hard. As the applause died down, her eyes flicked toward me. She smiled, not the wide public smile meant for cameras, a smaller one, private, precise. She knew exactly what she was doing. Growing up, I had learned early how the scales tipped. When Brianna turned 16, she was handed the keys to a new car with a bow tied neatly around the steering wheel. When I turned 16, I got a lecture about responsibility and a summer job application slid across the table. Brianna's college tuition was paid without discussion. I signed loan papers that would follow me well into my 30s. Her wedding was an elegant affair at a country club. Noah and I had a modest ceremony in a borrowed space, which my father later described as sweetly simple. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself love wasn't measured in money or gestures. But as my father continued speaking, something inside me tightened. He talked about the nursery he was setting up in his house, the books he'd already bought, the toys waiting on shelves for a baby he hadn't even met yet. Each word felt like a quiet dismissal of everything I'd tried to share 7 months earlier. Because I had tried. I'd called from the hospital, my voice shaking with exhaustion and joy as Lily slept against my chest. He hadn't answered. I left a message, then another. I sent photos, invitations, updates. Each one vanished into silence, unanswered and unexplained. Now I understood why. My father's gaze shifted suddenly, landing on me with a familiar, indulgent smile. He raised his glass again, angling it in my direction so everyone could hear. "And Emily," he said lightly, "when will it be your turn to make me a grandfather?" The backyard went still. Even the music playing softly through hidden speakers seemed too loud all at once. Noah's hand found mine, steady and reassuring. Lily chose that exact moment to let out a delighted squeal, kicking her feet hard enough to bump my ribs. A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. I could have stayed quiet. The old version of me would have smiled, deflected, made a joke about timing or careers or someday. The good daughter, the one who never disrupted the mood. But as I looked down at Lily's open, trusting face, something finally broke. Years of swallowing disappointment, of minimizing myself, of letting the story be written without me. My voice, when it came, didn't shake. "It already happened," I said clearly. "7 months ago." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's smile faltered. His glass tilted, spilling a thin line of champagne onto the stone at his feet. And in that moment, with my daughter warm and solid in my arms, I knew there was no turning back. For a few seconds, no one reacted. My father stared at me as if I'd spoken a language he didn't recognize. His hand remained frozen mid-air, the glass still tilted, champagne dripping unnoticed onto the stone. Around us, relatives shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between my face and the baby in my arms, as if trying to reconcile two realities at once. What did you say?" he asked. I took a small step forward, just enough to bring Lily fully into view. She blinked up at him, unfazed, then shoved her fist into her mouth with determined concentration. "I said it already happened," I repeated. "Your first grandchild was born 7 months ago." Brianna laughed. It was sharp, quick, and just a little too loud. "Emily, stop," she said, shaking her head like she was embarrassed for me. "This isn't funny. You really shouldn't do this right now." A murmur spread through the crowd. A few people nodded automatically as if her words made sense simply because they came from her. My father turned toward Brianna without thinking. "What is she talking about?" he asked, his voice uncertain. Brianna stepped closer to him, placing a hand over her stomach protectively. Her face softened into concern, the same expression she'd used our entire lives whenever she wanted to be believed. "Dad, I think she's overwhelmed," she said gently. "You know how emotional she gets. The stress, the pressure. She's probably just projecting." Noah inhaled sharply beside me, but I shook my head slightly, stopping him from speaking. "I invited you," I said, keeping my voice steady, "to the hospital, to our home, to Lily's baptism." Every invitation went through Brianna. Brianna's eyes snapped to me. "That's not true," she said immediately. "You told me you wanted privacy. You said you didn't want a big fuss." A few people glanced at me, questioning now. "I never said that," I replied. "I begged you to tell him." My father looked back at me, confusion deepening. "I never received anything," he said slowly. "No calls, no messages, nothing." "I know," I said, "because they never reached you." Brianna scoffed. "This is ridiculous. You're accusing me of hiding a baby?" "Dad, she's clearly upset. She's always been jealous." Something inside me steadied instead of shattering. "I kept copies," I said, "of everything." My father's glass slipped from his fingers and landed on the patio with a dull clink before rolling to a stop. No one moved to pick it up. He looked at Lily again. Really looked. At her chubby cheeks, her curious eyes, the way she clutched my sleeve like I was the most solid thing in her world. "That's a real baby," he whispered. "Yes," I said quietly, "she is." Lily chose that moment to babble loudly, kicking her feet with delight. A nervous laugh rippled through the guests, but it died quickly. Brianna stepped in front of my father, blocking his view. "Emily, enough," she hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." I met her gaze, something I'd avoided my entire life. "You threw them away," I said. "The invitations, the announcements, all of them." Her smile flickered, just for a second. "That's insane," she snapped. "Why would I do that?" "I found them," I said, "in your trash, unopened." The air shifted. Several people gasped. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Brianna laughed again, but it sounded thin now. "So you went digging through my garbage," she scoffed. "That's not normal, Emily." "I was invited into your house," I said, "by your housekeeper." My father took a step toward me. His voice dropped. "Why didn't you tell me yourself?" he asked. "I tried," I said simply. "You never answered." Silence stretched between us, heavy and exposed. Brianna turned to him quickly. "Dad, don't fall for this," she said. "She hates that I'm pregnant. She always has to make things about herself." "That's not true," Noah said quietly, finally speaking. "Emily cried every night because you didn't know Lily existed." My father flinched. He looked between us, torn, then slowly reached out, his hand hovering near Lily's back, uncertain. She responded by grabbing the air enthusiastically, missing his finger by inches. Something in his expression cracked. "I need a moment," he said, his voice rough. Brianna's jaw tightened as she saw it too. The balance she'd controlled for years was shifting, and this time she couldn't stop it. My father lowered his hand slowly, as if afraid that even the smallest movement might shatter whatever fragile understanding was forming in front of him. He took a step back, then another, running a hand through his hair in a way I hadn't seen since I was a child. "This doesn't make sense," he said quietly. 7 months. A baby. How could something like this happen without me knowing? Before I could answer, Brianna moved fast. "She's lying," she said, sharper now, the softness gone from her voice. "Dad, please, you can't seriously believe this. Emily has always exaggerated things when she feels ignored." A few heads nodded. Habit was powerful. I inhaled slowly. "Lily was born on December 10th, I said, "at Edward Hospital. She weighed 6 pounds, 9 ounces. She had trouble latching at first, and the nurse named Karen stayed late to help me." Brianna's eyes flicked to the side. "I slept in a chair for 2 nights, I continued. "Noah wasn't allowed to stay because of hospital policy. I called you at 3 in the morning because I was scared and exhausted and happy all at once." My father looked at me sharply. "You called?" "Yes," I said. "You didn't answer." Lily shifted in my arms, letting out a small hiccup before settling again. She tugged at my necklace, her grip surprisingly strong. "She's real," I said, my voice tightening. "She cries when she's tired. She laughs when the dog barks. She hates being put down and loves baths. She's not a story." Brianna laughed, but it sounded brittle. "Anyone can memorize details. That doesn't prove anything." Noah stepped forward then, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. "I was there," he said. "Every appointment, every night, every moment you weren't." Brianna shot him a glare. "This is between siblings." "She's my wife," Noah replied, "and that's my daughter." The word daughter echoed in the sudden quiet. My father sank down onto a nearby chair as if his legs could no longer hold him. He stared at Lily, his eyes filling with something that looked painfully like regret. "If this is true," he said hoarsely, "then I missed everything." "Yes," I said, "you did." The honesty hurt, but I didn't soften it. I'd spent too many years cushioning the truth for other people. Brianna's voice rose. "You're choosing her over me?" she demanded, panic slipping through her anger. "After everything I've done for you?" "I'm not choosing," my father said weakly. "I'm trying to understand." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. My hands were steady now. I tapped the screen and held it out to him. The first photo filled the display. Me in a hospital bed, pale and exhausted, Lily curled against my chest. Behind us, a whiteboard with the date and time written clearly. December 10th, 4:18 a.m. My father's breath caught. That's you," he whispered. I nodded and swiped. A video played next. Lily at 3 weeks old, hiccuping softly while Noah laughed off camera. Another swipe. Lily's coming home outfit. Another. Her baptism, tiny and solemn in white. Brianna lunged forward. "Stop it!" "No," my father said suddenly, holding up a hand. The word hung in the air. He took the phone from me, his fingers trembling as he watched. Each second that passed seemed to carve something deeper into his expression. "I never saw these," he murmured. "I know," I said quietly. Brianna backed away, her face pale now. "Photos can be edited," she said weakly. "Not hospital timestamps," Noah replied, "or witnesses." A low murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. My father lowered the phone and turned slowly toward Brianna. "Did you know?" he asked. "About the baby." She hesitated, just for a heartbeat. It was enough. His shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" Brianna's composure shattered. "Because it wasn't fair," she snapped. "You loved her first, everyone did. She never had to fight for attention." The words stunned the crowd into silence. "That's not true," I said. "Yes, it is," she shot back. "You were always enough." "I wasn't." My father closed his eyes, pain etched across his face. Then he opened them and looked at Lily again. "May I?" he asked softly. "Hold her?" My throat tightened. I nodded. I placed Lily carefully into his arms. She studied him for a long second, then reached up and grabbed his tie, laughing loudly. My father broke. Tears spilled freely as he pulled her close, his voice shaking. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Behind him, Brianna stood very still. For the first time, she had nothing left to say. The backyard felt unrecognizable after that, not because anything had physically changed, but because the illusion had collapsed. Conversations didn't resume. No one reached for drinks or laughed too loudly to smooth things over. The truth sat between us, heavy and undeniable. My father still held Lily, rocking her gently as if his body instinctively knew what to do, even while his mind struggled to catch up. He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed, breathing uneven. "I missed everything," he said again, softer this time. Her first days, her first smile. Lily responded by patting his cheek with clumsy enthusiasm, then letting out a delighted squeal. A few people smiled despite themselves. It was impossible not to. Brianna watched from a few steps away, her face tight and pale. Not angry now, calculating. I recognized the shift immediately. When charm failed, she looked for control. "Dad," she said carefully, forcing her voice to steady, "you're overwhelmed. Anyone would be. This isn't the time to make decisions." My father opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. "What decisions?" he asked. "About believing everything Emily says," she replied. "About letting her turn this into a spectacle." That word snapped something inside me. "I didn't turn anything into a spectacle," I said. "You did, by hiding her." A ripple moved through the guests. No one contradicted me. My father straightened slightly, still holding Lily close. "Did you throw them away?" he asked Brianna. "The invitations." Brianna's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes darted briefly toward the house, toward the space where her control had always felt safest. "I was trying to manage things," she said finally. "You were stressed. Emily was stressed. I thought it was better this way." "Better for who?" he asked. She didn't answer. "I trusted you," he said quietly. "I trusted you with my family." Something in his voice made her flinch. Daniel stepped closer to me, his presence steady. "We didn't want to fight," he said. "We just wanted Lily to have her grandfather." My father nodded slowly. "And I should have been there." He looked down at Lily again, brushing his thumb gently across her tiny hand. "I can't change what I missed," he said, "but I won't miss anything else." Brianna's composure cracked. "So that's it?" she snapped. "You're just going to forget everything I've done for you?" My father's jaw tightened. "This isn't about forgetting," he said. "It's about accountability." The word landed hard. A few relatives shifted closer, unconsciously aligning themselves. Aunt Linda cleared her throat. Uncle Mark folded his arms, his expression unreadable, but no longer indulgent. "I think we all need some space," my father continued. "This party, it's over for me." Gasps followed. "You can't just leave," Brianna said sharply. "This is my baby celebration." He met her gaze. "And that is my granddaughter," he said, nodding toward Lily, "the one I didn't know about because someone decided I didn't deserve to." Silence. He turned to me. "Emily," he said, his voice rough. "If you'll allow it, I'd like to come see her, soon." The question felt like a door opening after years of knocking. "Yes," I said, "but we're done pretending." He nodded. "I don't want to pretend anymore." Reluctantly, he handed Lily back to me, lingering for just a moment before letting go. She fussed softly, clearly unhappy about the separation, and he smiled through tears. As he walked toward the gate, a few relatives followed him without a word. Brianna stood frozen in the center of her perfect backyard, surrounded by half-eaten food and decorations that suddenly felt excessive and hollow. "You planned this," she said to me, her voice shaking now. "You came here to ruin me." I met her gaze calmly. "I came here because you invited me." The truth did the rest. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe she didn't. As Noah and I walked away, Lily nestled against my shoulder. I felt eyes on my back. Not judgment, not pity. Awareness. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking to make someone else comfortable. I was standing exactly where I belonged. The guests didn't disperse immediately. They lingered in clusters, unsure whether to pretend nothing had happened or acknowledge that everything had changed. Conversations resumed in low murmurs, cautious and fragmented. The music still played somewhere, tinny and out of place, as if it hadn't realized the party was already over. I sat on the edge of the stone bench near the garden wall, Lily curled against my shoulder. Her breathing was slow and even now, exhaustion finally winning. My arms ached, but I didn't shift her. I needed the weight of her there, something solid and real. Noah crouched in front of me. "You did it," he said quietly. I shook my head. I told the truth. Across the yard, Brianna stood rigid beside the gift table, fingers clenched around the edge. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of the confidence that had always wrapped around her like armor. A few relatives approached her, said something softly, then moved away again. No one stayed long. That had never happened before. She waited until the yard thinned before coming toward me. "You're proud of yourself," she said, stopping just out of reach. Her voice was low, sharp. "You always wanted this, everyone looking at you like you're the victim." I looked up at her, tired but steady. I didn't want attention. I wanted my daughter acknowledged. "You could have handled this privately," she snapped. "I tried," I said, "for 7 months." Her eyes flicked to Lily, then away. "You didn't have to destroy me." "I didn't destroy you," I replied. "I stopped protecting you." That landed harder than any accusation. She laughed, brittle and humorless. "You think Dad choosing you fixes everything? You think this changes the past?" "I don't think it fixes anything," I said. "I think it stops it from happening again." Before she could respond, my father appeared at the edge of the patio. He looked exhausted, older than he had that morning, but there was a steadiness in his posture that hadn't been there before. "Emily," he said. Brianna turned instantly. "Dad!" "Not now," he said, not unkindly but firmly. "I need to speak with your sister." Brianna stared at him, stunned. "You're just leaving?" "I am," he replied. "I'll call you later." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. For the first time, she had no leverage. My father walked toward me slowly, careful not to wake Lily. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I want the chance to earn trust, if you'll allow it." I nodded. "That's all I'm asking." He hesitated, then reached out and brushed his knuckle gently against Lily's tiny hand. His face softened instantly. "She has your eyes," he said. I smiled faintly. "Everyone keeps saying that." He straightened and looked at Noah. "Thank you," he said simply. As he left, a few relatives followed him without comment. Others avoided Brianna's gaze entirely. The drive home was quiet. Lily slept the entire way, oblivious to the earthquake she'd triggered by simply existing. Noah reached over and squeezed my hand at a red light. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I feel lighter." That night, after Lily was asleep in her crib, my phone buzzed. A message from my father. "I can't stop thinking about her laugh. I missed so much. I'm so sorry." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Come see her tomorrow." He responded almost immediately. "I'll be there." A second message followed, from a number I hadn't blocked yet. "Brianna, you've taken everything from me." I typed, then deleted, typed again. Finally, I set the phone face down without responding. For years, I had mistaken silence for peace. Now I understood the difference. Peace wasn't quiet. It was honesty, even when it shook the ground beneath you. My father arrived the next morning just after 9. Not early enough to seem overeager, not late enough to suggest hesitation. He stood on the porch with a small paper bag in one hand and his car keys in the other, shifting his weight like a man unsure whether he was welcome despite the invitation. "I didn't know what to bring," he said when I opened the door, "so I brought breakfast." Inside the bag were muffins, still warm, and a carton of coffee. Such an ordinary gesture, and yet it felt monumental. "Come in," I said. He stepped inside slowly, taking in the space as if it mattered. Lily's playmat spread across the living room floor, the framed photos on the wall, the quiet evidence of a life that had gone on without him. Lily was on the floor, propped on her elbows, gnawing determinedly on a silicone teether. When she looked up and saw him, her face broke into an instant grin. "Well," he breathed, dropping to one knee. "There you are." He didn't reach for her right away. He waited, watching her reactions, letting her set the pace. When she crawled toward him and grabbed his finger with surprising force, his breath caught. "She's strong," he said. "She is," Noah replied from the kitchen, and opinionated. A small, real smile crossed my father's face. For a while, we talked about nothing important. Lily's sleep schedule, her obsession with ceiling fans, the way she clapped for herself after knocking things over. The tension slowly loosened, replaced by something tentative and fragile. Eventually, my father sat back on the couch and rubbed his hands together. "I owe you an explanation," he said, "not excuses." I sat across from him. "I listened to Brianna because it was easier," he admitted. "She needed reassurance. You seemed capable. I convinced myself you didn't need me." The words still hurt, even now. "I should have questioned it," he continued. "I should have noticed when you stopped showing up, when calls went unanswered. I let myself believe the version that made me comfortable." "And Lily?" I asked softly. "How did you never ask about her?" His eyes filled immediately, because asking would have meant admitting I failed you. The honesty disarmed me more than anger ever had. "I can't undo what I missed," he said, "but I want to be here now, if you'll let me." Before I could answer, Lily crawled toward him again, pulling herself upright against his knee with a determined grunt. He laughed, startled and delighted. "I'll take that as a yes." That afternoon, the truth spread faster than I expected. Messages came in from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months, some apologetic, some awkward, some clearly struggling to reconcile what they'd believed with what they now knew. Brianna remained silent until the message arrived. "Dad won't answer my calls. You finally got what you wanted." I stared at the screen for a long moment before handing the phone to Noah. "She still thinks this was about winning," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "It was about surviving." That evening, my father stayed for dinner. He fed Lily mashed sweet potatoes, missing her mouth more often than not and wearing half of it by the end. Lily thought it was hilarious. As he stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "I'm going to talk to Brianna," he said, "but I won't let her rewrite this again." "Good," I said. After he left, I sat on the couch with Lily asleep against my chest, her small weight grounding me. The house felt calm in a way it never had before. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the ground to shift beneath me. The truth had been spoken, and this time it was staying. The days that followed settled into something unfamiliar: stability. My father called every morning. Not long conversations, not emotional confessions, just simple check-ins. How Lily slept, whether she'd eaten, what small new things she'd done. He listened more than he spoke, as if he were trying to relearn the rhythm of being present. Brianna, meanwhile, disappeared in a way that felt intentional. No dramatic texts, no late-night calls, just silence. The kind she used when she was regrouping. I didn't trust it. On the fourth day, my father asked to meet me alone, not at my house, not at his, somewhere neutral. We chose a small cafe on the edge of town, the kind with chipped mugs and mismatched chairs, a place without history. He was already there when I arrived, staring into his coffee like it might explain how his life had split so cleanly in two. "She came to see me," he said without looking up. My stomach tightened. "Brianna?" He nodded. "Yesterday." I sat down slowly. "What did she say?" "She cried," he replied. "Told me she felt ambushed, that she never meant to hurt you, that she was just trying to hold on to her place." I waited. "She admitted throwing away some of the invitations," he continued. "Not all, just enough to keep me away. She said she planned to tell me eventually." My hands clenched around the mug. "Eventually doesn't give me back 7 months." "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't." He looked older than I remembered. Not weaker, just stripped of certainty. "She asked me if I was choosing you over her," he said. "And what did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her I was choosing the truth," he replied, "and my granddaughter." Something in my chest loosened, even as grief settled beside it. "She's angry," he added, "more than hurt. She feels exposed." "That's because she is," I said. He nodded. "She's already telling people a different version, that you kept Lily from me, that you staged the party to humiliate her." I exhaled slowly. "Of course she is. But it's not working the way it used to," he said. "People are comparing stories now, asking questions. That surprised me more than anything." "She built her narrative carefully," he said, "but lies don't survive daylight. Before we left, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I won't let her rewrite this," he said firmly. "Not again. Not at your expense." That night, something unexpected happened. A family group message popped up on my phone. Emily Carter was added to the group. I stared at the screen, stunned. Uncle Mark wrote first, "We owe you an apology." Aunt Linda followed, "I should have asked questions sooner." Others chimed in, awkward, hesitant but present. Brianna said nothing. The silence was louder than any argument. Later that evening, as I rocked Lily to sleep, my phone buzzed again. A message from Brianna. "You think you've won." I stared at it for a long time before replying. This was never a competition. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. I blocked her number. Not out of anger, out of clarity. That weekend, my father came over with a small, stuffed elephant. He sat on the floor with Lily, letting her gum the ear with fierce concentration. He filmed her clumsy crawl like it was the most important thing he'd ever witnessed. Watching them together, something inside me finally settled. For years, Brianna had controlled the family by deciding who spoke and who stayed silent. Now, she no longer had that power, and for the first time, I wasn't bracing for what she might do next. I was living in what she could no longer touch. The shift didn't announce itself loudly. It showed up in small, undeniable ways. A cousin who used to cancel at the last minute now arrived early. An aunt who once spoke to me only through Brianna started texting me directly. Invitations came with my name on them, not as an afterthought, not filtered through anyone else. Brianna, was no longer the center through which everything flowed. The first real test came the following Sunday. My father insisted on a casual family lunch at Aunt Linda's house. Nothing formal, he said, just food and conversation. I almost declined out of habit, but then I looked at Lily, wobbling determinedly across the living room floor, and decided she deserved to be seen. When we arrived, the house buzzed with low conversation. It quieted briefly when we stepped inside. Then Aunt Linda smiled and reached for Lily without hesitation. "May I?" she asked me. Not Brianna, not my father. "Yes," I said. That alone felt like progress. People gathered naturally. Questions followed. Genuine ones. How old was she? Did she sleep through the night? Who did she look like? No one looked toward the door expecting Brianna to arrive and anchor the room. She didn't come. She said she wasn't feeling well. Aunt Linda murmured later, not defensively, just factual. No one rushed to excuse her. That was new. While Lily napped in a borrowed crib, Uncle Mark pulled me aside. "I need to say something," he said bluntly. I believed what was easiest. "I won't do that again." I nodded. "That's enough." That night, my father called. "She asked if I could fix this," he said quietly. My chest tightened. "Fix what?" "Make things go back," he replied. "And what did you say?" "I said there is no going back," he said. "Only forward with honesty." I closed my eyes. 2 days later, a message came from Noah's phone. From Ryan. Brianna's husband. "Can we talk? Just briefly." I showed it to Noah. We both understood what it meant. Control was slipping. We met Ryan at a quiet park cafe. He looked exhausted in a way sleep wouldn't fix. "She told me you were unstable," he said without preamble, "that you'd made up the baby to punish her." I didn't react. "And now," he continued, "I've heard too many versions. None of them line up." "She didn't expect anyone to compare notes," Noah said calmly. Ryan nodded. "I just needed to know, Lily is real, right?" I looked at him steadily. "She is." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. I thought so. After that, things unraveled faster. Brianna stopped attending family events entirely. When she did appear, she left early. Conversation stalled when she entered a room, not out of hostility, but caution. People no longer accepted her version of reality without question. She noticed. Her messages became erratic. Apologies wrapped in accusations. Self-pity sharpened into blame. I was protecting everyone. "You always twist things. You think you're better than me?" I didn't respond. One afternoon, my father sat on the floor watching Lily knock over a stack of blocks with dramatic flair. "She asked me if I loved her less now," he said suddenly. The question landed heavy. "And what did you say?" I asked. "I said love doesn't disappear," he replied, "but trust has to be earned." Lily laughed, delighted by the crash of blocks, unaware of the quiet reckoning happening around her. For years, Brianna had defined herself by comparison, by being the most needed, the most protected, the most believed. Now, without control, she was left facing something she'd avoided her entire life: accountability. Not because I chased it, but because I stopped shielding her from it. And for the first time, the family wasn't rearranging itself around one person's comfort. It was finally rearranging itself around the truth. The confrontation didn't arrive with shouting or spectacle. It arrived on a quiet Tuesday afternoon when Lily was smearing mashed banana across her tray and the house felt almost too calm. The doorbell rang once. I knew who it was before I looked. When I opened the door, Brianna stood on the porch without her usual armor. No perfect outfit, no careful smile, just tired eyes and a tension in her jaw that told me she hadn't come to perform. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't step aside. "You can say what you need to say here." Her lips pressed together. "You're enjoying this." I felt no surge of anger, no fear, just clarity. "No," I said. "I'm finally not afraid of you." That landed harder than anything sharp could have. She glanced past me toward the sound of Lily babbling inside. "You paraded her in front of everyone," she said. "You knew what that would do to me." "I told the truth," I replied. "What it did was your responsibility." She scoffed, but it lacked conviction. "You always had it easier." I shook my head. I had to be easier, quieter, less demanding, because there was no room for both of us. That stopped her. For the first time, she didn't interrupt. She looked past me again, at Lily now standing unsteadily, gripping the edge of the table. Her face softened in spite of herself. "She looks like you," Brianna said quietly. "Yes," I said, "and she deserved to exist." Her shoulders sagged. "I didn't hate her," she whispered. "I was afraid of what she meant." "What she meant was the truth," I said gently. "And the truth doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient." Brianna laughed weakly. "I don't know who I am if I'm not the one everyone protects." The admission hung between us, raw and exposed. "You can find out," I said, "but not by hurting other people." She wiped at her eyes, frustrated. "It's too late." "For things to go back," I agreed. "Yes." We stood there in silence for a long moment. Then she nodded once, like someone accepting a verdict she'd known was coming. "I won't come around anymore," she said. "Not until I can figure things out." I didn't argue. I didn't chase her. I didn't offer reassurance I couldn't mean. As she turned to leave, she paused. "I never wanted to erase her," she said. "I just wanted to matter." "You mattered," I said softly. "You just chose the wrong way to prove it." She walked away without looking back. That evening, my father called. "She came to see you," he said. "Yes." "She told me she's stepping back," he continued. I think she finally understands that control isn't the same as love." "I hope so," I said. A week later, Ryan filed for separation. The news came without drama, no accusations, just a quiet acknowledgement that trust had been broken too many times. Brianna didn't fight it. Family reactions were restrained, not cruel, not triumphant, just cautious. Boundaries, once ignored, were now firmly in place. One afternoon, my father pushed Lily's stroller through the park, stopping suddenly as she laughed at a passing dog. "I thought being a good parent meant protecting one child more," he said. "Now I know it means protecting the truth." Lily kicked her feet happily, oblivious to the weight of the realization. Watching them together, something in me finally settled. Not relief, peace. The kind that doesn't demand silence. Brianna's shadow no longer stretched across my life. And for the first time, neither did fear. 5 months later, my living room was louder than it had ever been. Not chaotic, not overwhelming, alive. Colorful balloons bobbed gently against the ceiling, their strings swaying every time someone passed by. A slightly crooked banner stretched across the wall, announcing "Lily turns 1" in glittery letters that Noah had insisted on hanging himself. Lily sat proudly in her high chair at the center of it all, a tiny paper crown slipping over one eye as she clapped at nothing in particular. Her first birthday. Family filled the room. Real family. The kind that showed up early to help set up chairs and stayed late to wash dishes. the kind that knelt on the floor to make silly faces instead of hovering for photos. My father arrived 3 hours early. He wore a t-shirt that read, "Pop Pop's Girl," Lily's photo printed boldly across the front. He'd ordered matching ones for anyone who wanted them. More than half the room wore one. "I may have gone a little overboard," he said sheepishly. I smiled. "You're doing great." He crouched down, arms open, and Lily toddled toward him on unsteady legs, collapsing against his chest with a squeal of delight. He lifted her easily, laughing like a man who still couldn't believe he'd been given a second chance. "I'm not missing anything else," he whispered into her hair. And for the first time, I believed him completely. Brianna wasn't there. She hadn't been invited, and she hadn't asked. There was no dramatic absence, no whispered commentary, just space, necessary and quiet. Ryan stopped by briefly with a small gift and an awkward smile. He wished Lily a happy birthday, apologized without over-explaining, and left before the cake was cut. It felt respectful, appropriate. Later, while Lily smeared frosting across her cheeks with joyful determination, my phone buzzed with a notification, a tagged photo, a small catering event, clean setup, smiling guests. My business. It had grown slowly and honestly, word of mouth, family recipes shared with credit and care, no exaggeration, no stolen stories. I still worked my day job, but this felt like something I'd built with my own hands. Grandma Florence would have loved it. As the party wound down and Lily finally fell asleep against my shoulder, I sank onto the couch, exhaustion settling in like a gentle blanket. My father sat across from me, scrolling through photos on his phone. Too many, probably. He didn't care. "I spent years thinking independence meant you didn't need me," he said quietly. I was wrong. I met his eyes. "You're here now." He nodded, "and I will keep choosing to be." A week later, I ran into Brianna at the grocery store. She looked thinner, quieter, pushing a half-empty cart. When Lily called out happily at a man who vaguely resembled my father across the aisle, Brianna froze. She watched as my father turned, smiled, and lifted Lily into his arms without hesitation. Something in Brianna's face crumpled. She left her cart behind and walked out. The cashier glanced after her, then back at me. "You know her?" I nodded once. "I used to." Life didn't become perfect after that, but it became honest. Family gatherings changed. Old assumptions were questioned. Apologies were spoken instead of buried. Boundaries were respected instead of dismissed. Lily learned to walk, then to talk. Her favorite words were Mama, Dada, and Pop. She loved dogs, apples, and knocking over block towers with dramatic flair. Every milestone was seen, celebrated, remembered. One evening, as I watched my father push her gently on the swing at the park, his laughter echoing as loudly as hers, something settled quietly inside me. For years, I thought justice would feel loud, explosive, vindicating. Instead, it felt like peace. Not the fragile peace built on silence. The steady kind that comes when the truth is no longer hidden, and no one is afraid to stand in the light. My daughter grew up knowing exactly where she belonged. And finally, so did I.